If you've ever played a Fallout game, you probably know who the Mysterious Stranger is. For those of you who need a quick refresher, the Mysterious Stranger is a character who shows up throughout the Fallout games in the form of a perk. Today I'm going to try to beat the game in a way that fits the stranger. For the rules, I'm only allowing myself to use the stranger's choice of weapon, revolvers, and I'm only going to use the character's clothes. With all that out of the way, it's time to ask, can you beat Fallout 4 as the Mysterious Stranger? I decided to use my pre-made character this run, so I don't have to worry about dealing with the roaches. And I assign my special stats accordingly. I max out luck for critical hits, I have a high agility for VATS as well as the gunslinger perk, no intelligence and charisma seeing as the stranger never talks, decent endurance for the added protection, high perception for better hit chance, and low strength for added carry weight. I then do my best to make the stranger and leave the vault. Upon exiting the vault, I unequip everything I have on and head to Sanctuary. I search for a fedora but have no luck, which is a little ironic, and then begin grinding levels. This time I was able to scrap almost everything in town, which I was able to use to power level myself straight up to 5. I ended up taking Idiot Savant, 1 Perception, 1 Intelligence, and Gunslinger. Using the I'm Special book, I leveled Perception up again, and then was able to squeeze a little more XP out of Sanctuary. This pushed me to level 6, which I used to take the Scrounger perk to help me get ammo for my Magnum later. I then started running south in the hopes of somehow finding a revolver. It seems my high luck stat finally paid off here, seeing as I was able to find a revolver. On my way to Diamond City, I passed by Drumlin Diner and stopped to see if I could fix things peacefully. I of course have the charisma of a cardboard box, meaning as soon as I talked to Wolfgang, he tried to kill me. Luckily, my act of foolishness made the people in the diner immortal, so they were able to clean up Wolfgang pretty easily. It was here I decided I would use the pipe gun that was there, seeing as it was still a type of revolver. I ended up using one of my few bullets to put Simone down, and then looted the bodies. Not satisfied with the murder of Wolfgang, Trudy ran to Concord to bring the fight to the raiders. Poor things didn't know how to react when the world's angriest mom showed up and started beating them senseless. They ended up all dying to Trudy, allowing me to reap the reward of XP. Unfortunately, this good fortune didn't last, as I tried to pickpocket Trudy, only to get caught and then killed like so many raiders before me. This set me all the way back to Sanctuary, so I had to repeat the whole process again. Thankfully, this time Trudy didn't go full commando, letting me trade with her to pick up a few caps. After this, I ended up running straight to Diamond City. My hope was to buy a .44 pistol there, but jumping ahead a bit, it was pointless. None of the merchants in town wanted to give me the trade I wanted, so I was off to Good Neighbor to see if they had anything. Before I left, I made sure to talk to Ellie, seeing as it completes the Jewel of the Commonwealth quest. You could skip straight to saving Nick, but I like to have the XP. Good Neighbor was just as useless as Diamond City, so I decided I would do a couple quests before returning. The only thing I could think of that might be my level was the raiders at Concord. I'm just going to pretend the Deathclaw at the end is not a thing and go through the quest as normal. The good news is that the raiders are possibly the weakest enemy in game, so all it took was a single headshot to kill each one. Something I found out about the pipe revolver is that it's really hard to hit shots with it. It's not that the gun has bad accuracy, or that I have bad aim. No, for some reason the revolver's aiming down sights is slightly off, making me waste a lot more ammo than usual. After cleaning up the raiders, I had a brief chat with Preston, picked up the perception bobblehead, and headed outside. The raiders outside were marginally stronger than the ones inside, but their heads popped like all the others. Now you're probably wondering how the Deathclaw fight went, and simply put, it was spectacular. On my first attempt, the monster lizard ripped me to pieces, but the second try went much better. Originally, I was going to cheese the fight, but then things took an interesting turn. The fight, which was going painfully slow, was abruptly ended when the Deathclaw was served the Bethesda special and was flung several hundred feet in the air. On top of that, Preston managed to snipe the thing as it landed, killing it instantly. I then sent Preston to Sanctuary and fast traveled back to Diamond City. It's around here I started researching places you could get a pistol, and it turns out one is really close to Diamond City. The pistol happens to be in Hardware Town, so I made sure to talk to Abbott so I could get the XP from it. On my way there, I heard some settlers calling for help, so I thought I would show up, kill the raiders, and then leave. At least that's what I thought, until I realized they were actually disguised raiders, and they all pulled shotguns out, causing me to get blown to pieces. One attempt later, with considerably more raider guts, I was able to clear out the hardware store, and in the back of the store you could find an office with a lot of wine bottles around. Inside there you could find a revolver sitting on the desk. With the gun in hand, I headed straight to Diamond City to get some more .44 rounds, and seeing how many traders are there, I should be able to get a fair amount. 7 rounds. I got 7 rounds. Luckily, I did my research so I knew exactly where to go to get more, and just west of the Museum of Witchcraft there is an unmarked location, and inside that location there's a hut with a guy named Leonard. Leonard has up to 100 bullets in his inventory, which means I could trade for them. To find the museum, I just repeatedly talked to the guards until one of them gave me the location, and I was on my way there. I had a few weird combat encounters, including a group of raiders, a group of dogs, a deathclaw, and an even stronger group of dogs. Thankfully, my high luck stat was carrying me in more ways than one, and I somehow managed to stray away from the path I was following, and I eventually ran into the old pump house. If you are the kind of person who explores Fallout games extensively, you probably know what's going on. Inside the pump house, you'll find a door with some buttons. If you enter the code 10451, you'll open the door, and inside there's a unique gun called the Gainer. The special revolver has the incendiary mod on it, making it significantly better than my basic snub-nose pistol. I ended up using the gun for a good part of the run, so I'm glad I was able to find it. After finally reaching the museum, I headed down the western road, and just as I said, there was a small shack. On my first visit, Leonard had about 80 rounds for sale, which would fuel my revolver needs for a little while. After finally getting a good amount of ammo, I decided I would try to face the triggerman. A single headshot is enough to put most of them down, although there were a few tankier ones in the mix. I found the best way to go about fighting them was to poke around corners and take pot shots at them. The only room that was really a threat was the biggest room in the station. I ended up wiping everyone out in that room, probably to compensate for last video. Either way, everyone in the room is dead, and that was the last real thing worth noting. Inside the vault, I ended up switching to my pipe revolver to save 44 rounds, but I did use my magnum to take out Dino. Something I realized while recording these clips is that I've never seen Dino pull out his gun. Even on my very first playthrough, I remember wiping him out with a stealth hit to the head. Anyways, after painting Dino's brains out on the walls, I decided to take Nick along for the rest of the run. Why? Well, there's actually a couple reasons why. The main reason is that he's wearing a fedora, and that he also has a revolver like the mysterious stranger. Also worth noting is that he has special dialogue when the stranger shows up, so I think it's fitting. Anyways, back to the vault, I cleaned up the last of the triggermen with minimal effort, and moved to Skinny pretty quick. For the fight with Skinny, I ended up just planting myself right in front of him, and taking out his 2 guards and vats. After that, a single shot took down Darla, and I was able just to bully Skinny to death. Outside the vault, I briefly talked with Nick, ran to Diamond City, and began the hunt for Serial Man. At Diamond City, I once again mash buttons until I'm done with the conversation with Nick and Ellie, and start the Getting a Clue quest. After rescuing Kellogg's key from McDonald's back pocket, I ran down to the house and started digging around in there, grabbing everything from Kellogg's pantry as I went. Normally around here I start doing side quests for XP and caps, but seeing as I'm super limited this run, that would be pointless. Instead, I started doing some of the detective cases for Nick, because I originally planned to max out affinity with him so that I could get his questline, but I never did. I also made sure to do the railroad questline up to the point where you get ballistic weave. This way I wouldn't get battered around so much. I personally am not a fan of the railroad, and I find it quite boring, so I'm not going to go into detail on it. By the way, the clips you're seeing on screen was from this run. After that long distraction was over, I decided I'd finally head over to Fort Hagen and try to deal with Kellogg. The good news is I found out that Fort Hagen is just a short walk from Sanctuary, so that saved me all the time I probably lost. The Synths in the fort do put up a good fight, but I'm still low enough level where they aren't that big of a challenge. I made my way through the building, as I normally do just by going through the bottom door, and then sneaking my way through the rest of the fort. There really isn't much to say here, except for the fact that I had a pretty easy time. Things didn't really quite pick up until I got to the Kellogg. If you're wondering how the fight with him went, there you go. The memory den is the same as always, so I really don't have to go into too much detail. The only thing I did remotely different is I made sure to take Nick along, this time because I usually just leave him behind, but I wanted to have him this run. The trek through the glowing sea is as difficult as always, especially since this time I'm not allowed to wear a hazmat suit. Oddly enough, there was a weird thing that happened, where I got chased by some rad scorpions, and not feeling like fighting them, I just ran. The scorpions ended up chasing me all the way to the crater of Adam, where they killed all the children. I initially meant to spare the cultists this time, seeing as I slaughtered them last time, but the giant scorpions had other plans. I also did have a pretty weird encounter where I was fighting a Deathclaw that ended up picking me up, although my luck seemed to strike again because this time Nick was able to kill the Deathclaw before it could kill me. But the weirdest part about this was that the Deathclaw's animation still played, but there was no Deathclaw. Inside the cave, I talked to the Great Green Giant, and then fast traveled straight to Green Tech to start dealing with the Courser. Unfortunately for the gunners at Green Tech, I had started investing in a critical hit build after the Kellogg fight. This meant that none of them could withstand the sheer power of my revolver, and I was able to clean them up pretty quickly. The rocket launcher gunner is a pain as usual, but I was able to headshot him this time, so he really was not a concern. Dealing with the last of the gunners goes smoothly, and it was finally time to move on to the Courser fight. As much as I'd love to say the Courser fight went as smoothly as the Kellogg one did, I can't. I'm not saying the Courser fight was hard or that it managed to kill me or even hit me. I'm just saying that I wasn't able to one-shot the Courser like Kellogg. No, he instead took about 4 hits in VATS. Stepping over the bodies of the railroad, I got the chip decoded and headed straight back to Virgil to get the interceptor plans. Getting the blueprints means it's time to start everyone's favorite part of Fallout 4, Minutemen settlement building. This really is the main reason I don't do the Minutemen questline. It's just so annoying and tedious that I hate it. The good news is that since I've gotten the signal interceptor plans before talking to the Minutemen, I don't have to do the first couple quests for them. Instead, I could just talk to Sturgis right away and start building the teleporter. Building the thing went pretty smoothly considering I gathered everything I needed while exploring, so I just had to assemble it. Now I'm gonna come clean here, this is the first time I've ever done the Minutemen questline. I'm not sure why I never got around to doing it. I think it has something to do with the settlements, but I digress. I'm not too concerned because up until this point it was pretty easy. Before heading inside the teleporter, I saw Trash Can Carla, so I told Nick to look away, and then I shot her. This seemed to make Preston really angry, but he's not wearing a fedora, so I don't care. After that, I stepped into the teleporter, got ready to go into the Institute. Inside the unnecessarily big lab, I walked straight up to Father's Son, where I shot him, and then walked very slowly away. Why, you ask? Because I felt like it. I then informed Preston that the Institute hates us, and that it definitely was not my fault. After that, it's time for, you guessed it, more settlement work, except now I have to do a lot more. I made sure to do as many of the special settlements as I could, just to make things a little less grindy. The only other things worth noting is I found the strongest raider group in the Commonwealth, who managed to kill me a bit more than 20 times. I also found the weirdest group of mourners who didn't care if people around them just died. The weirdest part about these mourners was that I couldn't tell if they were raiders or settlers. For the most part, they were all dressed up like raiders, but they were titled settlers. If that wasn't weird enough, when I killed them, Nick played the dialogue he does when you kill raiders, so that didn't clear anything up. Anyways, back to the settlements, I wrapped up the last of the major ones and then returned to Preston. And it was finally time to retake the castle. The Mirelurk Queen, although threatening, was too slow to fight back, and killing her was as simple as hanging back and using VATS to fire a few shots. By now, I already have rank 2 of the better criticals, so a critical hit is enough to take off a quarter of its health bar. A few cycles of this and the Queen is dead, and it's time to return to settlement work. If you're wondering about the regular Mirelurks, they went down in 1 to 2 hits, so there really was no issues there. Some grinding later and I was also given the Old Guns quest, so I ended up returning to the castle. The only threat in the castle's basement are the landmines sitting everywhere, but a little bit of sneaking got me through that. The Sarge fight was a bit more annoying than usual, but that's because I tried to one-shot him. I figured the only way I could kill Sarge in 1 hit was using a VATS critical on his fusion cores, but for the life of me, I couldn't get him to burn out. I ended up giving up halfway through and just unloading a few barrels into him, which was enough to kill him. After that, I looted the armory, built the artillery, and struggled to find a settler willing to work the dang thing. Fortunately, given enough time, a couple Minutemen will spawn on the castle, so I was able to use one of them. After testing the artillery, I left the castle and was immediately called back to defend it. For some reason, I was under the impression that defending the castle was easy, but I couldn't have been more wrong. I say for some reason, but I know exactly why I thought the castle defense was easy. Both the first Courser fight and blowing up the Institute are super easy, so I figured by default this one should be as well. Well, I was wrong, and for some reason all the synths in the castle were ridiculously strong. Not only were they all fully armored, but they also had some of the strongest weapons I've ever seen. They were able to kill the regular Minutemen in a single shot, and take me down in about 4 to 5. Keep in mind I have rank 3 Ballistic Weave, as well as the Refractor perk, so they shouldn't be able to do this much damage. Preston seemed to sense how bad the situation was, considering he pulled out a flamer and decided to bake the Institute. The rest of the fight at the castle was a slog, but eventually I was able to come out on top. By the end of the fight, there was only one courser left, and I ended up chasing him all the way to the center of Boston. Back at the castle, I listened to Ronnie talk to the dead Minutemen, and got ready to assault the Institute. The Minutemen definitely have the most boring entrance to the Institute, considering you just have to go through the sewers. Before I head to said sewers, I made sure to stop by Leonard's shop one last time, and left all my belongings with him. With 150.44 rounds in my pocket, I was ready for the final quest. The walk through the sewers is fairly simple, considering the only thing standing between you and the Institute is about 5 turrets and 2 synths. Getting through them is super easy, and I was inside the Institute in no time. I don't have much to say about the Institute, because for the most part, I ran through it. After the castle defense level, I have proven I have no protection from the synths, so I ended up spamming meds as I ran through, and figured that was my best option. I made sure to stop in the main room, and try to take out as many synths as I could, before making my way into the reactor room. Inside the reactor room, I ended up burning through most of my stim packs because I ignored all the synths and ran straight into the reactor. On my first attempt, I ended up dying considering Sturgis forgot to do his one job and never teleported me out, so I ended up getting cooked. On my second attempt, Sturgis managed to teleport me out before I died, and on my way out, I told RoboSean to burn in hell, and teleported as fast as I could out. Outside, I clicked the big red button, told Preston that we just murdered a bunch of people, finishing the game, proving yes, you can beat Fallout 4 as the mysterious stranger. I am genuinely surprised on how challenging this was, considering the 44 Magnum is one of my favorite weapons, and I'm generally pretty good with it. To be perfectly honest, this is probably my fault, considering I didn't once take a rank into Gun Nut, meaning my damage was fairly static throughout the run. Regardless, that's the end of this challenge. I hope you all enjoyed. Please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.